With how busy the months of October and November typically tend to be for gaming, with how fierce competition is throughout these months, there is bound to be some winners and some losers. Dominating the charts currently is undoubtedly Red Dead Redemption 2, which broke the record for the second biggest launch in entertainment history by raking in $725 million worth of revenue in just 3 days, only trailing behind another Rockstar game, Grand Theft Auto 5. More recently, it's been made known that the title sold an insane 17 million copies in a mere 2 weeks, already surpassing Red Dead Redemption 1's lifetime sales of 15 million copies. None of this takes into consideration the fact that Red Dead Online will launch soon, which is bound to bolster the player base even further in the same way GTA Online did. Now, while the likes of Rockstar are celebrating, other game companies are having a rougher time. I've already discussed what a disastrous launch it's been for Bethesda's Fallout 76, which showed early signs of poor sales performance after UK retail data indicated the game sold 82.4% fewer physical copies than Fallout 4 did, which is a huge gap that is unprecedented. And while we still don't know what sales data look like in other regions of the world, the heavy discounts for the title a mere week after launch is pretty indicative of a game that's in desperate need to sell more copies to meet even the most conservative of sales expectations. Another title that doesn't seem to be off to a good start is EA's Battlefield 5, which I'll be honest with you completely slipped my mind when it launched a week ago on November 20th, and based on early signs it would seem as though plenty of other people weren't too interested in the game either, if recent data is anything to go by. The following information was first reported by website Games Industry, which provided retail sales figures throughout Black Friday week in the UK, which was the time period during which Battlefield 5 officially launched. According to this top 10 list, despite mainly competing against games that had released during prior weeks, Battlefield 5 only managed to place at number 4 during its launch week. It was beaten out by Red Dead Redemption 2, which is seemingly still maintaining sales momentum despite having released a whole month ago. Black Ops 4 is showing even stronger figures despite it being a month and a half old, and, well, this is the UK we're talking about, so it should come as no surprise that FIFA did particularly well during Black Friday. More specific figures regarding Battlefield 5 sales performance were conveyed in this paragraph, and the numbers do look rather bleak when compared to how the previous entry performed. Apparently, Battlefield 5 launch sales were down by over 63% compared with 2016's Battlefield 1, which is a huge markdown. I'd like to remind you that this data is strictly for sales in the UK, and given how digital sales continue to overtake physical sales, digital sales being unaccounted for in this case may have some part to play in this decline, but the discrepancy is far too wide for it to be just that. A decrease of over 63% in physical sales doesn't just happen in a year to a popular franchise unless sales are down across the board. Now, given this is just one region of the world, this hardly paints a complete picture of how Battlefield 5 might be performing. We would need sales data from other regions, the US in particular, to get a better idea for whether the game is selling adequately or not. But as I mentioned in my previous Fallout 76 videos, one way to tell how well a game is performing without sales data is by being on the lookout for quick and drastic discounts. We saw it happen with Fallout 76, and according to a recent report, prices for Battlefield 5 are being heavily slashed as well. According to a report by website GameSpot, currently Battlefield 5 can be found for prices as low as $30, a 50% markdown from its base $60 retail price. And this comes in only a week after the game officially launched for everyone. Even during Black Friday, it is rare to see a AAA game that's actually selling well discounted by that much so shortly after launch. As an example, you'd be hard-pressed to find a retailer selling a brand new copy of Red Dead Redemption 2 at a discounted price unless it's being offered in some kind of bundle, despite the fact that the game came out a month ago. The only discount I've seen for that game is for its $100 Ultimate Edition, and even then the price reduction was only by 10% or $10. That right there is the sign of a game that's experiencing healthy sales, a stark contrast from what we are seeing with the likes of Battlefield 5 or Fallout 76. Hell, Battlefield 5's discounts were even more drastic than the lowest price point we saw for Fallout 76, which was $35, a little higher than Battlefield 5's $30 discounted price point. While that's hardly indication of which game sold better than the other, it does go to show how desperate EA is to bolster sales figures, indicating that the publisher may not be happy with the numbers they are seeing so far. I have no doubt that the game will still go on to sell a few million copies, but for a publisher like EA, which primarily tailors their business for investors who expect nothing less than indefinite financial growth, a major release like Battlefield 5 seeing so much less interest than past entries is bound to be a significant blow for the company. As for why Battlefield 5 may be struggling to sell, well, one factor is undoubtedly the amount of competition the game had to face. This is a title that had to compete with the likes of Call of Duty Black Ops 4, Red Dead Redemption 2, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Fallout 76, and more. EA definitely did the game a lot of favors by delaying it to November, as initial pre-order numbers were looking pretty weak back when Battlefield 5 was slated for an October release, sandwiched right between Black Ops 4 and Red Dead Redemption 2. But it's not as if this is the first time the Battlefield franchise has faced thick competition. In previous years, despite facing off against other prominent titles, Battlefield still managed to perform adequately or even dominate with entries like Battlefield 1. Given we have seen Battlefield hold its own before, it's hard for me to believe that Battlefield 5's lackluster performance this year can solely be attributed to the fact that it's facing off against other juggernauts. I would argue that this time EA and DICE royally screwed up with the game's marketing, a problem that permeated from the moment Battlefield 5 was announced. I don't have to remind you of the borefest that was the announcement event with Trevor Noah, of the backlash that ensued after Battlefield 5's announcement trailer showcased what some would say is an outlandish take on the World War II setting, and I don't have to remind you of the underwhelming E3 2018 presence of the game. EA's responses didn't help matters either, with one particular quote from Patrick Soderlund in which he generalized the dissenting crowd as uneducated before telling them to deal with it or don't buy the game, standing out as among the most infamous because we all know that getting up on a high horse and speaking down to people is the guaranteed way to win them back. Then people played the beta, and the reception for that wasn't particularly stellar, with many citing that while the core mechanics were as solid as ever, there was a lack of content and a lack of effort put on numerous fronts. Making optics even worse is their new release scheme that staggers when one's allowed to access the game, with Origin Access subscribers getting an almost 2 weeks head start, Deluxe Edition buyers getting a 5 days head start, and Standard Edition buyers getting the short end of the stick. A more accurate way to put it would be that Origin Access subscribers get to play the game when it's actually ready, Deluxe Edition buyers get the game's release date pushed back a week, while Standard Edition buyers get it pushed back almost 2 weeks. This is about as scummy as pricing and business models go, and it's shit like this that keeps EA from earning any kind of goodwill. Speaking of which, I also believe the goodwill they've lost over the last few years also had a large role to play in Battlefield 5's failure. It's no secret that scorn against EA had been building up over a long period of time, and the pot finally boiled over with Battlefront 2, after which the company's reputation has never been the same, which says a lot given the publisher was already despised among gamers prior to that incident, having been labeled the most hated company in America twice in a row a while back. As a result, many more gamers now seem to approach anything with an EA label with apprehension, and they seem to be more careful about pre-ordering or jumping into anything the publisher has to offer. Essentially, a lot of players seem to take a wait-and-see approach with EA games nowadays, which is very sensible in light of everything that's happened. Unfortunately, after having waited and seen, what's become abundantly clear is that EA hasn't learned a thing since Battlefront 2, failing to admit the error of their ways by insisting that it wasn't their intention to implement systems that blatantly resemble slot machines, declaring that they will push forward with loot boxes with a tried and failed player choice bullshit justification. And sure enough, there were loot boxes to be found in titles like FIFA 19, insinuating that players don't really know what they want to excuse shit like the abhorrent announcement of a mobile Command and Conquer game without offering any hopes for a proper new mainline entry, and they've even gone as far as to challenge Belgian gambling laws because they're so keen on protecting their ability to nickel and dime players with predatory glorified gambling. And now with Battlefield 5, layer on top of all that pent-up bad will with the game's disastrous and incompetent marketing campaign, the dreadful way they've communicated with and addressed potential buyers and critics, the lukewarm critical reception to what ultimately feels like a game that across the board needed more time to cook in the oven, and shady schemes like staggered and tiered release dates. And it's no wonder that so many people can't be bothered to take anything this publisher outputs seriously anymore. All of this is a result of EA's inability to think beyond short-term profits and to realize that consumer goodwill pays off big time in the long run. And as long as the publisher continues to have blinders to this very simple concept, as long as they continue to cut corners on the quality of their products, compromise the fairness of their business model to appease investors, and talk down to gamers like we're mindless drones, they'll keep setting their games up for failure. So yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, given how it's been one PR disaster after another since Battlefield 5's announcement, it's hardly surprising that the game proved to be an unpopular purchase, even among Black Friday shoppers in the UK, and it doesn't look like the game will fare much better in the US, judging by how quickly and drastically it was discounted. The writing was on the wall with this one long before the game even released, and EA has nothing but their own self-destructive and out-of-touch habits to blame. A damn shame too, as Battlefield's return to World War II could have been something truly epic, but alas, this latest entry was botched on numerous key fronts, and it's far from the best effort the series has seen. These are one man's perspective anyway. I'd love to hear what your take is on Battlefield 5's recent sales data in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy my content and would like to support this channel directly, consider donating on Patreon. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.